You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. Coming up, the latest episode of Outside the Trenches with former Chiefs reporter and insider BJ Kissel, Super Bowl champion and former K-State All-American offensive lineman Nick Leckey, and KCSN producer Tucker Franklin. The latest headlines, stories, and rumors, plus a blind nil segment where nobody knows what's going to happen. The latest Outside the Trenches, presented by Five Farms Irish Cream, a holiday distillery favorite, starts now. Let's go to BJ Kissel.
What's going on, Chiefs Kingdom? I just realized, Nick, that's the first time you've heard the new bumper.
I saw that. Was so damn cool.
Bumper.
That was so cool. I love that picture, by the way, too. That's probably what I want in my obituary. That picture. Thank you, Tucker.
For anybody watching or listening to the podcast, we got a new bumper and we've got a little video part of it, but we're stepping up our game. We've got new personalized bumpers for all the shows here at KC Sports Network. We appreciate you for spending part of your Wednesday with us, whether you're, I guess, watching live here on YouTube or whether you're listening to the podcast audio. We appreciate you for spending part of your day with us. I am BJ Kissel. That's Nick Leckey and Tucker Franklin. And fellas, before we talk, assuming little Chiefs, Bengals, and then hopefully moving forward a little bit, Nick, start with you. How was the week? How are things going?
Man, it's so cool. Our Cats prevailed, much to Tucker and Jordan's chagrin. And they did what hasn't been done in a long time. You know, they won an outright Big 12 championship, and they deserved it. They earned that victory. You know, they almost let it go, and then they came back and battled. And I thought it was so cool to watch them do it, and to do it with the backup quarterback was amazing. So just a good testament to what Kleiman's doing down there and the place they're building, and that's just going to recruit talent. And when you beat TCU down in Dallas and in Arlington, man, that's how you get guys like me who are from DFW be like, oh, who are these guys? You know, who are these guys? Maybe I want to go up to Manhattan and kick it. It's a great place. I'm
going to jump in and interrupt Tucker here because I don't care about his thoughts on TCU. And I had to deal with this shit. Sorry for the language. I had to deal with this crap in the DMs of the KCSN, and I've held back. But everyone was rooting for TCU, and I was getting hot. And Tucker, I'm normally pretty even keel. I was getting somewhat annoyed. It's still less than 50% seriously annoyed, but it was bothering me, Nick. I should have invited you into the DMs because I was not having it. It was Matt, Kent, Tucker, everybody whose teams got dominated by K-State this year, and they're still petty and upset. And they were just calling it out. And then I took the high road after the game, didn't say anything, just let it go. And then Tucker changed his profile picture to wearing a fucking TCU shirt.
Wow.
I was shaking
see it,
Bucky's
Tucker.
hand.
You're shaking Bucky's hand, but
you're a good luck charm, Tucker. We feed off your hatred and anger.
Listen, I tweeted out after the game, K-State is 2-0 when I'm in attendance. So I'm just waiting on my Sugar Bowl ticket. I'll give you the email address that anyone out there can send it to me if you want that win against Alabama. But great football game.
Are you going to wear Alabama stuff? Are you going to root for Alabama in that game?
Do.
Because you were rooting for Mizzou. You're rooting for TCU. You're going to do that.
You would have to. But you'd have to genuinely have to.
How's the Mizzou? You got to talk about, you got to wear an Alabama shirt on the Mizzou That's Who show.
Yes. Have you guys turned down any more bowl game invites?
Yeah.
Just a couple. Just Texas and Liberty. We got Gasparilla, though. So we're riding high with, one of the New Year's Six.
That's obviously a good come up. That's a good come up. You getting the Gasparilla. That's,
I found out what a Gasparilla was this week.
Okay. What is it?
It's like a pirate.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's Tampa, right?
Yeah, it's in Tampa.
It's an interesting area. Ybor City.
Yes. Tampa's got 2 bowl games.
As they should. I mean, where would you rather go? Memphis in late December or Tampa?
Right.
I mean, sunny
it's
South Florida. Yeah. That's how it should be.
If KU Mizzou would have played in the Liberty Bowl, we would have gone and covered it at KCSN. But Mizzou was scared, so it's okay.
They were scared.
It's okay. The best is when that stuff comes out and then it's like all the clamoring for narratives. It's like, no, Eli Drinkwitz like, we'll play anybody anywhere. And then everyone's just coming except for KU.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And then who knows at this point? It's just fun to bop everybody because nobody really knows what's the truth and what went down. And I'm sure there's something right down the middle.
Right.
As to where the truth is and all that. But Tucker, how much did you, before we get to the Chiefs stuff, how did you enjoy the Big 12 championship and being there?
It was a really great atmosphere, and I was telling you guys, the tickets I got were very close to God. We could have probably had a conversation if we wanted to, but way up there in AT&T Stadium. But getting to watch the game from that angle is like watching the all 22 as it happens. So I thought that was kind of cool, and it was just really fun. It's really hard not to look at the scoreboard, right? Especially when you're that high up and the scoreboard's right in front of your face. So I had to like force myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to watch the game. I'm not going to like sit in the stadium and watch TV basically. So I'm going to watch what's happening on the field. It was a great game. I wasn't upset of that Kansas State won. I want to get that out there. I was cheering for TCU just because they're a fun team. I think that just kind of their whole season has been kind of fun. The Sonny Dykes going from SMU in Dallas to TCU in Fort Worth, not having to move houses but changing jobs, and then playing SMU like week 3 of that year. Like one of like probably SMU's biggest rival is TCU. That's the game they hold in the highest regard. But like that whole storyline's crazy. Max Duggan played very well, and I think Kansas State. Yeah. We could probably talk about college football for a long time, but I think Kansas State and TCU are very similar teams. Just kind of the way, if you look at like the story arcs, they had a quarterback coming into the season that was a transfer, then they get hurt, and then they have their backup come in and play better than their quarterback did at the beginning. So I think those two are very similar teams. It was a really good football game.
If Max Duggan could complete a pass down the seam, then I don't think K-State would have won that game, but you got to give credit to K-State and the pressure. But you can't not watch that game, even as a K-State fan. At the end of it, just be like, fuck. Like that dude's a tough. Nick probably had some respect for their quarterback. I know
I always did, man.
That dude.
For whatever reason, TCU spits out these ginger tough quarterbacks. You know,
you got Andy Dalton.
Yeah. Still kicking it, man. Golly.
You guys were talking about all the prospects, and Maddie is doing all this NFL draft stuff, and I just wasn't paying any attention at that level. I knew Quentin Jefferson, number 1. Johnson, the receiver, like just a fucking manimal. They showed him up close, like talking to people before the game. And it was just like, oh my God, like gotta guard that guy. But do you know who we couldn't block? I don't know if it's a prospect at all, but 98 is a problem on their defensive line. Yeah. I kept Nick. I don't know if you were thinking this watching the game, but they had like 5 dudes in the box. Like we had numbers to run the ball all day long with their box, but like we could not block 90. Like he was a man amongst boys. On that defensive line for TCU, because we had numbers all the time to run the football.
Yeah, he was working. He was a problem. You get him isolated versus anyone. He was a problem for anybody. It was difficult. Made it a difficult day too.
Yeah, but the good guys won, and that's all that matters.
All that matters.
Defense
showed up.
Yeah. Yes, they did, and that was beautiful. The best thing for me is Carter wanted to come down. It was originally just going to be Megan and I were going to go down and watch this game, but my son wanted to go and absolutely like calling plays out, like did you see that? Did you see this? Like, oh, they did the jet sweep. Is that an RPO? Like he's 7 and like watching all that's fucking beautiful. It was so beautiful to sit there and watch the game with them. But let's talk a little Chiefs Bengals right now. If the first time watching this show, we set this up through blind nil segments where each one of us brings a different segment to the show, and the other two do not know what it is, but we're always kind of clued in on what Tucker's is because of the title of the show. We kind of have that kind of match. So Tucker, let's have you go first. Obviously talking a little Chiefs Bengals.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of start to shift the focus forward, but I do think that before we really start to turn that page, I want to start to look at some positive things from that game, because BJ, you've been talking with Matt and Nate kind of about what went wrong, kind of prognosticating that game, and you guys have talked about some of the positive things, but I think a point that you made on one of the KCSN updates, it's hard to talk about the positives so soon after a loss that's so deflating. That's so devastating in that sort. So I think we're far enough away that we can start to talk about some positive takeaways. So I want to get your guys' positive takeaways that you saw from that game against the Bengals, because there were some good things in that matchup. I'm curious what you guys saw.
Some positive things. All right, so I'll start. So I'll tell you what. And I was watching the game, win or loss, and I was watching McKinnon. So obviously, you guys know I love Pacheco. He's mini Steven Jackson. The way he gets up after like any sort of run and just bounces up, and I love the energy. Like that is great energy for the field. That's what you want to see as an O lineman, and that gets you hyped. But McKinnon with some downhill inside running, like fantastic, like breaking through arm tackles and speed, catching balls. We know he's a fantastic pass blocker. He ain't afraid to take on a blitzing linebacker. But the best takeaway, the best thing I saw from him, and it was the best way that it utilized where all my theories come together, is him with the Le'Veon Bell style draw plays. That was flipping awesome. Because that can segue, like, not play action for Chiefs, but draw game, right? Because they pass the ball a shitload of times, and everyone knows that. But you can incorporate the draw, like we talked about, use this offense, and the fact that they were getting in single back and getting the tight ends out of there, getting those 6-man boxes. I was like, yes, bring me that package. So that package with Pacheco, that package with McKinnon, I was like, yes, the Chiefs are getting ready for the playoffs. Ready.
I'm going to go with Trent McDuffie. I think we've talked about him over the last couple of days. I'm going to try to bring up the stats right now from the game as far as like his coverage grade, because I think the talk going into the game was, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They got 2 number 1 receivers, and they throw the 50-50 balls. They're going to get big plays down the field. Jamar Chase, he's one of the 2 best young receivers in football. There's about 5 or 6 guys. You say, who are the 3 best receivers? That conversation is going to always include probably the same 6 players that are in that. Jamar Chase is absolutely one of those 6 players, and we saw it. And we saw what happens when he's healthy or healthy-ish out on the field. But according to Pro Football Focus, Trent McDuffie was targeted 3 times, gave up 2 receptions for a total of 17 yards, which, considering what the total numbers were for Joe Burrow and those guys, they weren't finding success throwing the ball at Trent McDuffie. And the challenges that he's already faced this year, and know he's banged up for a little bit, it's not going to get any more difficult to win a Super Bowl for him individually in the matchups he has. And granted, the schemes are different and all of those things, but just from a pure talent standpoint, he's not going to face anybody better than the people that he's already faced so far this year when he's been out on the field. It's not going to get any more difficult than that to go win a Super Bowl. So for him to hold his own in that kind of way, and for us to be sitting here talking about, what went wrong with the Chiefs defense, it's kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth, because excited that we're not talking about the rookies and getting burnt and are these guys good enough, but it's also not great that we're talking about veterans and all of these things sorry, I'm distracted by the breaking news that's coming through right now, which we'll get to here in a second. But it's a good thing that we're not talking about the young DBs and wondering if they can handle this stage. It's a bad thing, because I know this is a positive takeaways section, but it's bad that when we're talking about the defense, we're talking about things like tackling, and we're talking about veteran players, especially on the back end of the Chiefs defense, not playing well enough to beat a really good football team. So great for Trent McDuffie. I think stock way up on him. I think Brett Veach and company absolutely nailed that pick at a high value position, which is going to set the Chiefs up for several years, not just with McDuffie, all those guys, Josh Williams, Jalen Watson. They have taken care in a very big way of a very expensive position group going into TV deal going up, cap room, all of that, so they can use that money to figure out the left tackle situation, trade for someone or something.
Hold on.
I'm trying not to go. I'm trying to stay as positive.
We can break that down. But hey, listen, and on a note with McDuffie as well too, when I was watching the film, and it's a small little thing, but I look for it a lot, especially with like DBs. On that Juan Thornhill interception, McDuffie was leading the way, and he put a nice block on their right tackle Collins. Like, it was really cool. Like, that to me shows camaraderie, brotherhood. I'm fighting for you. And guess what? I don't want to take on this dude who's literally 4 times my size, but I did. And I did it for you. So that was, to me, like a really cool thing for McDuffie. I'm like, damn, this dude's fearless. Like, that was awesome.
They always get hit on screens when those guys get out in space.
Exactly.
Like, it's his time. Like, it's my time to hit you.
Yeah. Before I get to mine, I think we do need to mention that Von Miller is out for the rest of the season. That's a huge deal. That was the breaking news, BJ, that you were talking about. Shout out Christian Gumminger for throwing that in the chat. Von Miller done for the season, tore his ACL. They had surgery, exploratory surgery, and they had to repair that ACL. Could be pretty big for the Chiefs coming down the stretch, especially with the Bills' schedule being as hard as it is. But I actually had everything that you guys were talking about written down on my list. I think Joshua Williams played really well as well. You can look at him. He was the 3rd leading tackler on the team. Dude's a really great tackler in space. The Chiefs love those athletic corners that can come downhill and tackle, and it's always great to see. the rookies perform like that is with McDuffie. Isaiah Pacheco played really well. I do like that. Nick, the play that I think of when you're talking about those delayed type runs, those developing type runs, I think he ran it to his left a little bit, like hesitated, then all of a sudden bursted forward for like 10 yards. Great play there, but I think you got to shout out the special teams. No turnovers on that side of the thing.
Not a shout out. That's not a shout out.
Doing their job. That's a positive. At this point, Nick, at this point, it's a positive.
Nick,
go ahead.
Sorry, I want to ask a question because I'm looking at the PFF numbers. I'm changing. I know it's positive, but I think this could be a positive development if Chiefs fans are listening and we have an open, very frank discussion for the next 3 minutes. We won't make this a whole episode about Nick Bolton. Because he may be the most divisive player in Chiefs Twitter on social media.
Why the hell is that?
No, it's very simple. It is very simple because there are those who pay attention, and I don't mean this in a bad way because I do it too. There are people who watch the ball and hear his name called all the time because he's making tackles. A lot of those tackles are 5, 6, 7 yards down the field as a middle linebacker, and he finished is a perfect example. Last game, he had like 17 tackles in the game against the Bengals. You look at his PFF grade, it's the worst on the defense. Those two things do not make sense. The Chiefs fans are like praising him, and the Chiefs notes come out after the game, and it's like +10, like this positive, like he had all these tackles, like he's awesome, he's getting all the tackles, need everybody else. But then the people who are studying and analyzing the game are seeing him not move. He's not moving downhill and going and making plays. Yes, very sure tackler when he gets his hands on people, but he's not necessarily seeing it and reacting in the way that a football coach would necessarily want that position to react. And so it can be both, but the truth is always somewhere in the middle with these things where it's like, he's not terrible, but he's not as awesome as the 17 tackles would lead you to believe, like he's making all these plays behind the line of scrimmage. Because none of those, I believe, were behind the line of scrimmage in this game. Still a very good player playing at a high level. That's a weird game because the box score will tell you stud, but the grades of the people who analyze it will tell you he was not doing well at all. You played this game, Nick. When you watch that, how do you kind of gauge whether or not a middle linebacker plays well? And let's have this open discussion because KCSN, Tucker, you've had thought. I mean, you're a Mizzou guy. You've thoughts on this, and we all look at it from a different lens. But Nick, what's your thoughts on?
It's one of those things where anytime you got a tackle on a linebacker and the size mismatch, it's going to be difficult for Bolton. I was watching those films, and he did some things where he's not I don't want to say this. He's not the most aggressive linebacker, right? He's not a Willie Gay where he's not going to come downhill and take you on. And I think that's his problem is that he's a hold-up linebacker. Like there's one play where he was getting pushed by Kappa down the field, right? And if you look at it, if you would have taken him on, then I think that play goes for bigger than what it was, where he did kind of a hold-up play where he's kind of played soft, you could say, and sort of like let the cavalry come in. So it turned like a 10-yard play and just 10 yards instead of that being like a 60-yard touchdown. So you can make a case for that one. But there was another one too where he's in the hole and he needs to fill the hole better, but he's like also running back had a two-way go behind a block. And, this offensive line for Cincinnati dominated. Like they truly dominated, like where you could tell they were doing man schemes and they were looking for Chris Jones. So the interior three were blocking, and then whoever had Chris Jones was getting double team help. And, Karras, Kappa, Collins, all those guys, they played phenomenal, just solid, where Mahomes was getting hit damn near every play. But Mahomes is also sitting 10 yards back again. So we have that issue coming back to rear its ugly head where people think, oh, what's wrong with Orlando Brown? Why is he getting beat? Well, look at the film and Mahomes is 10 yards back. You tell me if a tackle is supposed to win when they're 10 yards back. And once Mahomes started stepping up, that's when he got better. But yeah,
it was an interesting sorry to cut you off, Nick, but there was an interesting play I noticed talking about the offensive line. The Bengals faked a blitz. Nick Allegretti went to help with the one tech, and then on the fake blitz because Orlando Brown thought that Allegretti was going to get the blitz coming probably in that C gap there. he overset. And when he overset and then the blitzer backed off, the defensive end came in around on the inside. Allegretti didn't have the chance to touch him. That was one of the plays that I remember. I believe it was the sack on that third down.
Late in the game, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I know
So
exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was one of those situations that I think the Bengals just schemed it up really well, and those are tough. Like the defense is going to get you sometimes. But going back to the tackle situation, I think it's such an interesting conversation to me because tackles to me are much like RBIs in baseball. It's an opportunity stat. So you can be a very good football player, but not have very many tackles. Chris Jones is never going to lead the team in tackles, but he's the best player on the defense, right? We have a conversation a lot with Roquan Smith. Roquan Smith is a very good football player and has a lot of tackles as well. So like it's an interesting because you can see if you look at the tackle leaders, you see Roquan Smith, Bobby Wagner, these just last year, Jordan Brooks at the top, Denzel Perryman. Those are all really good football players. And so it's very confusing when you talk about like people who have a lot of RBIs in baseball too. They're probably really good baseball players, right? People who have a lot of tackles, probably good football players, but it's an opportunity stat. How many opportunities are you going to have to get tackles? I think probably more accurate is missed tackle percentage. There's no perfect way, right, to quantify this game. So it's hard to take one stat and live and die by it. But I think that's the kind of the interesting conversation around tackles. Being a middle linebacker, you do get a lot of those tackles. Plays are coming to you. You're the guy that's supposed to finish it off. Yeah.
I kind of liken it to like completion percentage for a quarterback in a way. I've never thought about this as a stat, but it's one of those stats that you could praise somebody for, but at the same time, it's like, well, if every pass he's throwing to the running back out of the backfield, of course he's going to have a high complete. And Mahomes talked about this on the podcast. I think it was with Kelsey, or he's talked about this recently, that he doesn't want his completion percentage to be too high because it means he's not taking chances. He's not giving his guys in that margin of error. He's talking about those inches to complete a pass. He's not being aggressive enough to give his guys chances to catch like the MVS ball. There's a couple defenders on him. He feels like he's got a step, throw it up, give him a chance, and then come back to him after he missed it. But if somebody's got an 85% completion percentage, probably means they're throwing a lot of checkdowns, a lot of simple passes, not really delivering the ball and running an efficient offense. Similar to tackles, you can get a lot of tackles, but if they're all 8 to 10 yards down the field, are you really helping relative to what your position is asking for within the defense and what that scheme is? That responsibility, to Nick's points, like that responsibility that you have, are you attacking it or sitting back? And I know it's not that simple, and it depends on the scheme and the play and all of that. But in general, Nick Bolton has become one of the more divisive players just because there's a lot of people that are analyzing the game saying he needs to get downhill, and people bopping back being like, this guy's getting all our tackles. His name's being called all the time. What are you talking about? And it's like, can we respectfully have this discussion of, I know he can tackle. I don't want him tackling 8 yards down the field.
Exactly.
There's a gray area for sure. And I think you look at the Chiefs' leading tacklers for the last couple of years, it's been Dan Sorensen. And if you have a safety as your leading tackler, that probably means a lot of plays are getting down the field. Yes. But we're never out here saying that Dan Sorensen's the best player on the defense, right? So it's one of those, it's just an interesting conversation for sure. It's one it's very fascinating.
I would have to absolutely agree. But like if you look at like the stats, offensive stats I look at, I like red zone efficiency and third down conversions. Those are the only really stats that I really give a shit about, to be honest with you. Like any other stats, kind of like even sacks are kind of like they're indicative. It's like that's someone else. I like pressures, QB pressures, and tackles for loss.
I used to, when I was at the Chiefs, I came up with this like 4 core stats chart, and it was if the Chiefs were better than their opponent in these 4 statistical areas, what was the percentage of winning the game? And if they were better in 3 of the 4, what was their percentage of winning the game? And then 2 of them, and which 2, and the combination was fascinating. I'm sure people are a lot smarter, can set this stuff up. Well, ask Joseph Hefner. He can set this up for us, our analytics guy, because it'd be a lot easier. But it was red zone conversion percentage being better. It was third downs, and then it was turnovers and penalty yards. And if like you had, like there was the one thing that could skew it. If you had like 120 yards in penalties, it could offset some of the other stuff. But if you were better in 3 of those 4 categories than your opponent, then you won like 94% of the time. And it didn't matter which 3. Just if you were better at 3 of those 4 areas because of how important they are, then you were most likely guaranteed to win the game. That makes sense. Most likely, kind of have a good chance.
Sort of iffy,
possibly.
maybe. Definitely,
Yeah,
maybe. Definitely,
Definitely,
maybe.
Ooh,
Yeah,
solid rom-com there.
exactly.
Look it up.
One. I love that one.
It's a good one. All right, let's move on, Nick, and talk. Or do we have any more positives that we want to take away from the game against the Bengals?
I was gonna say MVS. I think MVS did.
Yep.
You know, he had that drop in the end zone early, but then I think he was the Chiefs' leading receiver. He was targeted a lot, and he has the MVS experiences dropping the easy one in the end zone, but then making just the most absolutely insane catches with like 3 guys on him. So it's just like you get what you get with MVS, but I think that it's a positive to go back to him, get him back in the flow of the game, and become the leading receiver.
And now that everybody's, they're so good about that. They've done that. They did it with Pacheco. They do it with guys all the time. They would do it with Kelsey. Even a player of his magnitude, as soon as he fumbles, first play of the next drive, I think, was right back to Kelsey. Get the ball back in his hands. And this is the last thing I'll say, because now that everybody's had a chance to cool down a little bit, is that I know everybody's really frustrated about the loss, but for me, like, there's no boogeyman out there. Like, there's nobody out there that's significantly better. The Chiefs lost 3 points on the road and didn't play their best football and made some mistakes. We talk about the margin of error. 3 or 4 plays sways that game completely. If we make those 3 or 4 plays, there's a lot of more positives that we're talking about that in a different kind of way, because the end result was different. But we've seen what it's going to take for the Chiefs to win a Super Bowl, and it's not going to be any more difficult than running through the AFC. We've seen the Bills. Now they don't have Von Miller. We've seen the Bengals. Hopefully they can get that game at Arrowhead, but that's what it's going to take to win a Super Bowl, is those 3 or 4 plays, the Travis Kelce fumble, whatever, the decision to kick the field goal, all of those things. That's the margin of error. And we're now in a position, think about a decade ago, where we were just clamoring to be relevant. And now we're sitting here saying we just need to make these 2 plays and fire everybody because they didn't make those 2 plays. No, they're right fucking there to go win another Super Bowl. We know what it's going to be, and they're not that far off. They're not set up to just go and dominate everybody every week, but they have everything that they need. They just have to make the 3 or 4 key plays, and hopefully they come out on the better end of it this time. But let's move on to the next one. I think we're moving forward a little bit. I guess, Nick, let's go to your blind nil segment.
All right. So I view Denver as this team that's going to win the AFC West this year. I said that. I'm pretty sure I said that. I thought the addition of Russell Wilson, I thought you have a great, they did have some injuries key early on. Have you ever seen a product that was advertised that not even come close to what it's doing, such as the shit show that is Denver this year right now?
Oh.
Have you ever, seen
that's a good one,
a more worse just collapse of, like, seems like they hate each other over there in Denver, and it's like, it's a top 5 defense. That's a legit defense.
Yeah, they're good.
That's a legit ass defense. And your offense is terrible.
Are you talking about a football product, or like,
I don't care. I don't any
consumer
other product. I've bought tack lights, right? And I'm like, this is not as advertised. Like, I was expecting to be able to see space from here at night with this.
I don't want to annoy too many people. I'll tell a story as fast as I can. But for Christmas, like 3 years ago, my wife bought this like house thing for the kids, like playing one of those, like, little homes, and has a little kitchen inside of it. And this damn thing, like, it was sitting in a box outside, and I thought it was like plastic, like one of those you just like kind of shove them together. And so, my being an idiot like myself, I didn't think about building it until the night before Christmas. And then I go out there in the garage, start unpacking it, and then the thing on the front, as soon as I opened it, said 2 to 4 people, 3 to 5 hours. I was like, oh, okay. So I went back in, got a bottle of whiskey in a little glass, and went back out there. I was like, it's going to be a night. It's going to be a long night. I put it together. I did not rush, so it was not a rush kind of deal. I put it together exactly the way that it said. Christmas. We get to the spring. First mini storm, fucking thing falls apart completely. Like, just gets completely blown over. It was not my fault. I put it together exactly the way that it intended, but that thing was a piece of crap. I don't remember the brand. I'm not going to put anybody on blast. I should, but if I go back and find it, but that thing fell apart like 2 months later. Upset, Nick.
That sucks. So that's similar to this 2022 version of Denver.
So true.
Yeah. Looked great.
Looked great.
Didn't really examine as much as we should have, before you give somebody $240 million. Probably should have looked a little closer.
You mean due diligence?
As soon as you go out there, there's a little bit of a storm.
Done.
Let's hide.
Let's
Let's hide. Broncos country. Let's hide.
I saw a dude with a bag over his head and it said Broncos country. Let's hide. It was great.
Yikes. It feels like this is something the Chargers do every year, right? That we've kind of gotten immune to it.
True.
Every year
guys,
the Chargers are the next best thing, whether it's the Phillip Rivers LT Chargers or it's this version of Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler. I just feel like they're chargering. Is that fair to say?
Oh man,
I'm not a huge NBA guy, but maybe the Lakers a couple years ago too. Like when LeBron and Anthony Davis and all these guys Russell Westbrook all got together, and it was like, this is not good at all.
Didn't they win it though? Didn't they win it?
Well, no, it would have been probably last year's rendition of the Lakers. Jordan's probably better to ask about this. When they did add Russell Westbrook, and then everyone's like, wow, these guys are going to be good. And then Russell Westbrook stinks. He's bad. He's not a good basketball player anymore. But yeah. Man,
Christian.
this is
I saw it too.
Tucker mentioning a slam dunk DraftKings play that fell apart feels inevitable. Yeah, I mean, it's fair. It's fair.
I do Tucker's locks and I bet the opposite.
Probably sit around 500. I don't know what the Tuck's locks are. I haven't crunched the numbers in a minute, but yeah. Is this live? Yes, it is live.
Yes, General 51.
It is live. Yeah, but I think that was the first thing, Nick, that came to my head is like, well, it feels like the Chargers do this every year.
They do. They really do. But it's like injuries, right? And it's like just they fold. But see, that's why I love, and that's why I always stress to you guys, right? Everyone's always like September, October, let's crown someone's ass champs. And it's like, pump the brakes, wait for November, December, right? Yeah. Once the data, once you have, comparable footage, once they see your tendencies, once they see what you're all about, if you're not making adjustments, then good teams win November, December. That's plain and simple, man. That's just how it goes. And that's why I love football now. Right now it's like, okay, we're going to see who's good and who's trash and who's just a dumpster fire. That's just, you need to put out the fire and move on for the next year.
Listen, the Lions have won 5 straight, and that's in November, December. They're a good football team.
I think some more good analogies here. We can go around because I like this one. You can do it with like restaurants, with food. Like you see the advertising, you're like, oh, that looks awesome. And then you get there and you're like, the hell is this? Like, this is not what you advertise. This is not what this looks like.
The fast food glow up versus what you actually get. I've never seen any fast food that looks like that, where it's like perfectly, it's like blah, 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 box done, you're out. Except for Chipotle. Chipotle always looks good as advertised. Like Chipotle is the one where like the pictures and I always feel I have a strong feeling. I feel like more people are doing it now, but if I'm in like a restaurant, I would love to see pictures on the menu be like an actual thing. I mean, they have Instagram for that, but it's like, I like the pictures. I like to see what I'm eating.
Especially now with like the QR codes.
Yes.
Because now it's like, if you're not going to print a menu and you don't want it to be too big and like a Cheesecake Factory menu and like to like get the person next to you to scoot over a little bit so you can read the whole thing.
Lay it out.
Yeah. Like now it's going to be online. You're going to use a QR code, at least get some pictures.
Yeah. You could easily do that. Is there, who else is dumpster firing right now? Zach, or what's his face for the Jets, right?
Zach Wilson. He's dumpster firing. The Jets are dumpster firing.
Yeah.
The Jets have a good defense. Mike White. Oops, I didn't mean to hit my mic. Mike White can win games. He didn't beat, obviously, the Vikings, but like that game was close. That game was closer than it probably should have been for the Vikings. But
Urban Meyer with the Jags.
Oh boy, I knew that was good.
That's a good one.
That was like Les Miles. I knew it was going to be a disaster.
You know, another one, honestly, because I vividly remember watching my wife coach a volleyball game and watching the game on my phone was Chip Kelly. When he got to the NFL, there was that first game that they played. I don't know if it was the opening night, but they scored like 2 touchdowns at the beginning and was like, he's going to revolutionize the NFL. Like, it's going to change everything. And it gave defensive coordinators like a week to be like, yeah, we're just going to do this. It just did not work at all. But there was a time there that people were like, this is going to change everything. Nope.
I could tell you to a T, any sort of college coach who comes to NFL, if they're going to be good or not. Like Matt Rule, like he's a college coach. Like he needs to stay in college because I don't think his mentality is built for NFL. Like I don't think. Tell you one guy who I love is the Dolphins head coach.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
That is, and I love because he's new, right? He hasn't been a head coach anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Right.
like, I love his approach. Like he's like this young guy. Every time I'm on Twitter, I will catch any sort of mic'd up with him talking nonsense because as a player, it's refreshing. You got this guy who's younger who can relate to you. You know, you're in early 20s and he can relate. You know, it's like he knows what's good. He's probably got a Snapchat account. He's probably got a burner account too, right? So yeah. But he's fun.
You know, it's good when you can remember like 2 or 3 clips right off the top of your head. Like I know the mic'd up segments that you're talking about where for one of them, he was talking to Tua and he was like, yeah, man, I'm glad we can agree that Georgia is the best team in the SEC.
Yes.
Like calling a play like in the middle of a game. And then he walked up to a player and was like, hey, you know that thing you just did where you went one way and the guy went another? And he's like, keep doing that. That was really good.
Yeah. Like, so cool. Like he didn't try to be a know-it-all, didn't try whatever, just brings good energy. And I think that's what you have to do as a head coach. Especially right now when you're grinding right now. It's tough. December.
What I thought was really cool about him, this wasn't like a mic'd up thing. I can't remember who tweeted this out, but it was a video of like a lip reading where Mike McDaniel told a guy, he said, I effed up. And I don't know, Nick, how many times has a coach told you that like they messed up into a game? And I just feel like that's something you don't see.
A couple times, right? But few and far between, right? They usually don't whatever be like, yeah, that was on me. Like they'll tell you in like Wednesday meetings or Monday meetings, yeah, like I effed up, I messed that one up. But like when it's live like that, it's just cool. That's open dialogue. I think it's cool. I think you have to shed this sort of machismo, tough guy image of the NFL, and it's like, man, it's like, treat me decently, right? I'm not just a machine. It's like, or a piece of meat.
All right, let's move on to the final segment of this Outside the Trenches. Appreciate, again, everybody hanging out. Show sponsored by our good friends at Five Farms Irish Cream. It's a holiday distillery product. They're based up in Western Missouri, and the Five Farms come from Ireland. They get everything from over there. It's good stuff. And joined by Nick Leckey and Tucker Franklin. All right, guys, final segment. Chiefs have 5 games left on the schedule, 3 of those on the road, 2 of them at home. They are going, obviously, this Sunday to play against the Denver Broncos on the road, and then they're at the Houston Texans, at home against the Seahawks, at home against the Broncos, and on the road for the final game of the season, January 8th, at Las Vegas to play the Raiders. How many of those games do the Chiefs win? 5 left to go, and this is it's going to turn into, do the Chiefs still end up with the 1 seed in the AFC? I would contend that they do. I do not think they're going to lose any of the 5 games through the rest of the season. I think the hard part of their schedule is over, and I think they will be locked in and play well. Even if they play slightly above average, they'll win all of these games. They would literally have to play average or poor, and these other teams would have to play one of their best games of the year. Outside of Seattle, which is kind of hit or miss, that would be the most difficult one in my opinion, but I think the Chiefs win 5, and I don't think the Bills, looking at their schedule, can win out. Nick, how do you feel like the Chiefs are going to finish up in the last 5 games of the regular season?
I feel confident. Having Seattle at home is huge because that is a miserable place to play in December. It's cold. It's wet. They're so loud. It's so loud. It is just deafening loud. I was in NFC West for 5 years out of my 6 years and played there every year. And every year I was like, this place is so loud. How is that possible? But yeah, I think Houston might give them trouble. There might be one of those ones where you might overlook. It might be a noon game, and you just overlook them, right? Because you're just like, okay, it's whatever, and they might not be battling for much, and so you're like, you overlook them. But I think it's going to come down to like where you're going to have to beat in Las Vegas last game of the year, clinching home field that last game. So I don't think they're going to get any regular season games off, which is I'm glad. I'm really glad.
Looking at this schedule, 3 noon games in a row. The Texans, Seahawks, Broncos, that middle stretch right there. The Raiders game still to be determined. Obviously, this game this week is at 3:05. It was flexed out of the Sunday Night Football slot because the NFL said, we don't want to see Russell Wilson.
That's amazing. What an amazing
Patrick Mahomes. No, it's wild. But I do think they win all 5 of them. They shouldn't be favored by less than 7 points in any of these games, too. Looking at these, I think they'll be favored by more than on the road at Oakland, Las Vegas could be tough to be favored by more than a touchdown. But I do think against the Broncos, the line right now, I don't have it up, but they certainly should be favored by more than 2 touchdowns against more than a touchdown against the Texans, Seahawks too, and especially at home against the Broncos. So I think that they should be able to win all 5, and they will win all 5.
They're favored by 9.5
There you
this
go.
Sunday against the Broncos. Over
So
under
the-
43.5.
They playing?
Go ahead.
Where are they playing?
Oh, Denver. So that's
Amazing.
that's what I'm saying is that like on January 1st when the Broncos come to Arrowhead, that line's probably going to be 12.5, if not closer to 14. So it could be interesting.
What are the scores for Denver? Because this is a really good defense. Like, don't sleep on his defense at home with crowd noise. It's like 9 is pretty hefty.
I've got a good one. I'm gonna have to do this on the fly because I brought this up a few weeks ago because we always figure out different ways to dunk on the Broncos because it's fun. Somebody had tweeted out what the Broncos record would be if they had like averaged 18 points
Gosh,
a game.
they have clinched home field.
The last 3 weeks, they would have won. They would still would have lost a couple of games, but they've traded Bradley. This is like a Bradley Chubb type stat, and just how bad their offense, because the defense has been good. That's one thing Chiefs fans to know. The Broncos are not good. We talk about Russell Wilson. Their defense has been pretty good this year. If they would have scored 18 points, they would have started 1, 2, 3-0, and then 3-1.
That's amazing.
4-1, 4-2, 5-2, 6-2, 7-2, 3-4. They'd be 8-5 right now if they would have scored. If they would have scored at least 18 points in every game, even exactly 18 points, they'd be 8-5.
That is amazing. And what's their record now? What is their actual record?
3-9. That math doesn't add up. So something like that, people.
They just lost 10-9 to the Ravens, and Lamar Jackson left that game.
That was
so.
They hate. Listen. There's when you suck, and you're sucked that bad, there is miserableness. There are 2 camps right now, and it's like offense on one side, defense on one side, and guess what? Defense hates the offense right now. Like, absolutely is pissed. You lose 10-9 on the road too, right? They were in Baltimore.
Yeah.
That's frustrating. Even the old philosophy where, defense has to hold them to one less point, offense got to score more, right? Whether you win 55-50 or you lose 55-54 or you win 2-0. That is difficult. There's tension.
They've only given up more than 20 points 3 times, and 2 of those were to the Raiders. So, and then
the Raiders aren't world beaters.
The Panthers were the other one. Like the Panthers, a Christian McCaffrey-less Panthers team. That is.
Pretty sure PJ Walker started that game, an XFL quarterback.
Wow.
By the way,
he did all right. He did all right.
No, I think he's good. He's probably the best quarterback that the XFL will put out. The XFL is going to start up again in the fall, but the spring. But yeah, this team's not good.
If you're a Denver fan, what's this year like for you? What is this year like for you? Just
the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, like that. I saw this on TikTok of some guy talking about like when he found out like Russell Wilson was being traded. I think it was like March 8th of this year, and like being super excited to like now it's just like the exact opposite. It's like polar opposites.
Are they like the Raiders? Like, are they stuck? Like they can't afford to offload that contract? Like,
no, he's there.
By the way, still,
I don't.
This AFC West is such a dumpster fire this year.
It's so wild.
I don't even know. Like, we'd have to bring on like a cap expert, like bring on like Joel Corey or somebody who knows to be like, can he extend and like change the money around? Because even he has to acknowledge like you are so bad. Like this is killing us.
You have to.
I don't know. But some of it's so early in a huge contract that you're still going to be really pigeonholed in what you can do with the money, with just from a high level. Like there's only so many different things that you can do, but do you bring in another veteran quarterback and pay him a little bit and at least have some competition? Like a Baker Mayfield, like it's something like that, where it's like, he's not going to get a lot of money. You can pay him as some sort of backup and then at least you're more competitive because you can't make him the starter. Even though you're giving him all that money, you can't run him out there without losing the rest of the locker room if nobody believes in him and he's not making plays.
Yeah.
You can give him all the money and be like, you know what, we're just going to bite the bullet and pay you, but we're going to put somebody else out there. Maybe if there's like a backup quarterback somewhere in, Seattle that they could get back.
Matt Flynn. Should they get Matt Flynn to come in and save the day?
Like a Drew Lock, like a Drew Lock, a young player that's gonna
shout out Kissel.
Prove himself.
Independence.
Some fun stats that Jordan Foot just dropped in our chat here. The Broncos have scored 10, 16, 10, and 9 in their last 4 games. There's no out on the Russ deal until the next World Cup with $31 million in dead cap. $170 million.
They can extend dummy years, and they can do some. There's some stuff they could do to try to offset, but with the guarantees, like there's no way that it's still not gonna catastrophically be a problem for them.
Listen,
but at least they have draft pick. No, they don't have those either.
Here's my conspiracy theory. Basically, did the Bolin family sell the Broncos yet? Did they already sell
to the
them?
Walmart family?
The Waltons. Yeah, they got all the cash they need.
So, well, here's the thing. I think when Russell Wilson was sitting next to Goodell at like the Super Bowl or certain events, I think that should put him on snitch alert, right? As far as like, you're like, okay, buddy, what are you doing? But then was he sent in to destroy the Broncos, right? Was it like NFL saying, listen, we don't need you to be good. We need you to inside job, right? Just whatever. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, it's just, but it's mind blowing to me how bad I'm truly like mind blown about how bad they are this year.
I see the comment from General 51 saying the Raiders are the toughest matchup basically that the Chiefs have going forward, and that if Patrick Mahomes beats Seattle, he'll beat every team. He hadn't beat the Vikings or the other one. So Seattle, there were 2 teams left after the Rams, and it was the Vikings and the Seahawks. So yeah, I'm sure that'll mean a little bit of something. Is just kind of like a fun box to check for a 27-year-old quarterback that will have beaten 30 of the other 31 teams in the NFL. But guys, I think the Russell Wilson trade as it stands now is, I don't even know if it's in the conversation. It's near the top of the conversation for worst trades in NFL history for how it's gone down. And that's not even being hyperbolic at this point. Like they gave up picks, players, and the result has been.
If he wasn't on a big contract, would he get benched?
Yes.
Yeah.
Should he get benched?
I don't think his teammates like him.
I
like, at least the chunk of them don't.
Who's their backup right now? Like, it's not Trevor Siemian, because Trevor Siemian's with the Bears. I don't even know who their backup is. He missed a game earlier this season. I can't remember who it was.
It's Brett Rippon.
Okay, even better. So like, they don't have a choice, Nick. Like, they have to play him, unless he's hurt, I guess. And then I think they activated Kendall Hinton, as like the backup emergency quarterback when that happened. But like, yeah, it's tough out there.
Shout out to Dalton Reisner, the left guard there. He's doing a tremendous job. Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. They're in Denver. Love you, K-Stater. He's one of the
he was doing a lot of that stuff when he was at K-State. That is not surprising. It was cool. I watched that whole video of him getting announced, and you tell how authentic it was because they surprised him. He thought he was doing a community event, and then they surprised him with it. It's a really cool deal. Yeah.
Day one starter as a rookie.
I was just looking at the football database here to figure out next year the Chiefs will play the Vikings. It's they'll have the NFC North, is what it looks like. So next year, Patrick Mahomes could beat all teams in the NFL, barring if he beats the Seahawks in a couple weeks. But
could face the Vikings in the Super Bowl.
That is true. He could do that, but
somehow they get past the Cowboys and the Eagles.
That means they'd have to win in the playoffs, and the Vikings don't like to do that.
Hey. Talk about opposite Broncos is Minnesota. 10-2.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Who had that on their bingo board, right? Who had that on their
helps when you play like a 4th place schedule.
That's true too, but still they're doing it. They're what Denver could have been. Solid.
Reminds me of the Chiefs in 2013 when I'll never forget Pete Prisco calling Chiefs the worst 9-0 team in NFL history. Are the Vikings the worst 10-2 team in NFL history?
100%. 100%. They are. Nobody believes them. Nobody gives them credit. So with these next 5-game road stretch, we'll see if they're contenders or pretenders. But
they have talent. Darius Smith has been killing it this year. Is one of the targets in free agency. If the Chiefs are going to go get it, spend money on a big name free agent, like he was the edge rusher that I like. And then Justin Jefferson is up there with Jamar Chase as just like a problem, and they fucking play together.
Yeah, when Zendarius lines up inside, it's damn like 3rd and long. He's getting there. Like he's getting pressure. Like they're running so many games, it's unreal.
Did you see this comment from Christian here?
Yeah, like is he running stats and like notes for us if he wants to be like a
Well, he did send me.
Show.
He actually sent me a DM before we started the show. And was like, "Hey, if you need a blind nil, here's an idea," which I really appreciated. I already had the blind nil sorted out, obviously, because I had to make the link, but that was a part of it. It was 1-score games. There's a lot of conversations like if the results of 1-score games were different, I think the Chiefs would be down 1 spot, but like that would be the only change for the Chiefs. But it's very interesting when you look across the league.
They have 3 losses by a total of 9 points. They've lost every game by only 3 points. And it goes back to those stats of Patrick Mahomes only like maybe twice now in his career has he lost by more than 1 possession. Like there was a stat there for a while where it was never, and then they went to the Super Bowl and got blown out. There's only been a few that I can't think off the top of my head, but I know the Super Bowl obviously was one, but they've always been close. He's always been right there. But shout out Christian Gumminger. A little side note. We'll have some more information and an announcement later today about the end of the Soul of KC toy drive and holiday raffle that we have to benefit Operation Breakthrough's Christmas store. We've got some really great news about that. So I know Christian is loving that. He heads up our community outreach with the different things that we do. And so shout out to Christian for all his help there and helping bring this one home, because it was a very successful group. And we'll be out shopping on Friday to buy all the presents for Operation Breakthrough. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So I think that's all we've got for this episode. We appreciate everybody for hanging out with us on this episode of Outside the Trenches. Again, we'll have plenty more content getting you ready for Chiefs and Broncos this Sunday. For Nick Leckey, Tucker Franklin, and BJ Kissel, and for Jordan Foote producing this thing, we appreciate you all for hanging out. Watch on YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening on podcast, we appreciate if you want to give us a review and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Make sure to check out all of our college content as well. We've got a lot of stuff. So anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you later.